Nathan Burns was a man of extremes. Extremely reserved, extremely polite, extremely solitary. At 37, he had already built an empire, owner of one of the largest hotel chains in America. He preferred to keep his office far from the spotlight of New York or Los Angeles. He settled in Washington, just a few hours from Seattle, where his parents and siblings lived. Yes, he wanted success, but not at the cost of losing the scent of his mother's Sunday breakfast or the long talks with his father on the family's old porch. Nathan was a handsome man, the kind who, even in silence, commanded the attention of a room. Tall, steady gaze, always in a tailored suit. But elegance couldn't hide the melancholy in his eyes. Time had brought him victories, but also the weight of distrust. The women who crossed his path, almost all of them, saw dollar signs where he just wanted to be seen as a man. Ordinary, simple, capable of loving and being loved. And so it was that 2 months ago he met Patricia Carter. It was an ordinary morning when she first came into his line of sight. They were in a meeting about fiscal restructuring. He was speaking to the accounting director when she walked in. Clipboard pressed to her chest, discreet glasses, hair tied in an unpretentious bun. A whisper of sweet perfume. Small smile. Subtle presence. But to Nathan, she entered with her own soundtrack. The kind of woman who didn't know she was beautiful. And that made her even more so. Over time, glances turned into pauses. Pauses into conversations. Conversations into dinners. And dinners into a romance. There was sweetness in Patricia's gestures, a beautiful shyness, like someone hiding flowers in her pockets. She was 9 years younger, just 24. She didn't seem to care about Nathan's titles or the cars he drove. She laughed at the silliest things, adored simple cakes with black coffee, and spoke of her dreams as if caressing the sky with her fingertips. But there was something vital, a silent question between them. Every time Nathan took her home after a walk or a dinner, she asked to be dropped off at the same house. A charming suburban home, with flowers in the garden, sheer curtains in the windows. Patricia would step out of the car, smile, wave, and slip inside quickly. But he was never invited in. Never. And over time that started to weigh on him. He didn't want to intrude. Nathan respected spaces and silences. But something about it felt rehearsed. Every night. The same scene. The same gate. The same goodbye. No exceptions. There was choreography in it all. And a restlessness began to grow. One Friday, after a candlelit dinner downtown, Patricia seemed more nervous than usual. Her hands were sweaty. Her eyes avoided his. Still she smiled, asked to be dropped off at home, and gave her traditional goodbye. But this time Nathan didn't leave. He waited for the gate to close, drove a few meters further slowly, as if just circling the block, parked on a corner ahead and turned off the headlights. And there he watched. 5 minutes in. Then he saw it. The house door didn't open. Patricia emerged through the garden, glanced discreetly around, and walked alone down the sidewalk. Nathan watched in silence, heart slowing like a scene in slow motion. She walked 2 blocks, until she stopped in front of a small house at the end of the street. Simple, faded paint, rusty iron gate, a makeshift garden made of reused cans, a clothesline with garments hanging, like someone airing out their dignity. And there Patricia went in, alone, without looking back. Nathan stayed there for over half an hour. The silence in the car was heavy. His hands clenched the steering wheel. He didn't know whether he felt betrayed, sad, or simply too human for a love still under construction. She had lied, or omitted. The next day, Nathan didn't wait for the clock hands to align. He asked Patricia to come to his office before lunch. She entered, smiling. But when she saw him serious, eyes fixed deep into her soul, the air seemed to grow heavier. "Why did you lie to me, Patricia?" He turned pale. "Nathan, I saw you yesterday. I saw where you really live. I saw you leave that charming house and walk to another down the street." Silence. She took a deep breath. "I didn't want you to see that. Not because I'm ashamed of you, but because I'm ashamed of myself." Nathan stood, walked over to her. They were inches apart. "Patricia, do you think I care about the house you live in? Do you think I fell in love with flowered windows? What hurts me isn't where you live. It's that you didn't trust me, that you hid it." She was crying now, as if the truth had been torn from her with bare hands. "I grew up there, just me and my mother, always hearing we weren't enough. And then you came along. With your manners, your perfect world. I felt too small, too dirty for someone like you." Nathan embraced her tightly, as if holding her from the inside. "Don't ever hide anything from me again. Ever. You gave me everything I needed, Patricia. Love, attention, peace. That's worth more than any penthouse on Fifth Avenue." She sobbed into his chest. "Forgive me. For lying. For thinking you'd care." Nathan kissed her hair. And for a while everything felt healed. But fate is a merciless screenwriter. Weeks went by, and on a Tuesday morning, a white envelope rested on Nathan's desk. No sender. Inside, a handwritten note. "There are things about Patricia you need to know. And if you've made it this far, you already know. This story isn't just about love. It's about truth, pain, and redemption. So subscribe to the channel now. Leave a like and tell me in the comments, what kind of story would you like to hear next? Forbidden love, family secrets, arranged marriages. Your comment might become our next script. Now take a deep breath, and let's continue." The white envelope remained on the desk like an unread sentence. Nathan stared at it for over half an hour. No stamp, no name, just those 5 handwritten words. "There are things about Patricia you need to know." For years, Nathan had mastered the pressure of multimillion-dollar decisions, meetings with international leaders, responsibilities that shaped the lives of hundreds. But those words, those 5 words, shook him like he was 15 again, sitting on a school bench, hearing for the first time that love can hurt. He folded the paper carefully, as if the gesture might soften the blow. Was it gossip, jealousy, a cruel prank? Or was it true? As much as he didn't want to believe it, something began to darken in his heart. In the following days, Nathan tried to act normal, but something had shifted. When he looked at Patricia, it wasn't distrust he felt. It was fear. Fear that she wasn't the woman he thought he knew. Fear that love once again was built on illusions. Friday of the same week. Another envelope, this time smaller, more direct. Do you know Patricia's family? That was enough. Nathan's mind began to replay every conversation they'd ever had. Whenever she spoke about her childhood, it was always vague. My mother's wonderful, a hard worker. My father died early. Our life was simple like everyone's. She never showed pictures, never mentioned any relatives. No uncles, cousins, grandparents. Just my mother, as if she were an abstract entity, almost a cover. Then came the idea. On Saturday morning, he'd stop by her house, bring flowers, like a romantic surprise, like a man just wanting to see the woman he loves. But deep down, Nathan wanted something else. He wanted answers. The Seattle sky was gray as usual. A fine drizzle blurred the windshield. Nathan parked across the street and stepped out, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Not red roses. He wanted to seem casual, natural. He was nervous, as if stepping into sacred ground that didn't yet belong to him. He rang the bell. Once. The door opened slowly, revealing a beautiful black woman, with a wide smile and wise eyes. Her skin the rich tone of fine cocoa. Her gaze as if it knew all the world's pain, and still chose love. She wore a floral blouse, a faded apron, and bore the radiant dignity of someone who doesn't need titles to be noble. "Can I help you, sir?" Nathan felt a chill. "I came to see Patricia. I'm Nathan. Nathan Burns." The woman's eyes lit up with recognition. "Nathan Burns. Well, what a surprise to see you here." She laughed, genuinely amazed. "Have we met?" he asked, startled. "I'm Joanna Clark, Patricia's mother. I'm also the janitor at the building where your office is, Mr. Nathan. Of course you wouldn't remember. Important men are often too busy to notice who cleans their hallways." Nathan went silent, swallowed hard. She smiled without bitterness, with a kindness that teaches without accusing. "Come in, please. The house is humble, but the coffee's hot." But he didn't take a single step, because there on the damp porch, with a woman who knew his name and routine, hit him. Patricia had never mentioned that her mother worked for him, that she cleaned his hallways, passed his security guards, saw his expensive shoes every day. More. Patricia had never said her mother was black. Nathan felt a storm of shame and revelation. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Joanna." The rush of life makes us commit the mistake of not seeing people, even when they're right in front of us. She simply nodded, as if she'd heard it before, as if it didn't offend her, as if she forgave it. "Patricia's in the shower. Would you like me to call her?" "No," he said, polite but firm. "I'll see her later. I just wanted to meet you." And then he left, without going inside, without having the coffee, but with a revolution stirring in his chest. The next day he asked Patricia to meet him. They were in his apartment, at the top of one of the buildings he owned. Panoramic view. Italian design furniture. Too much silence. She walked in and smiled. "What a surprise to be invited here on a Sunday. Is everything okay?" Nathan stood by the window, turned slowly. "I was at your house yesterday." Her smile faded. "I brought flowers. and I met your mother. Now her face was pale as porcelain. She tried to sit but lost her balance and remained standing. Why did you never tell me your mother works for me? That she's the janitor? That she's black? Silence. She lowered her eyes. 'Cause I was ashamed. Ashamed of what? Of everything, she whispered. The house. The life. My mother's skin color. You discovering it and looking at me the way many look. With pity, with judgment, with superiority. Nathan walked to her slowly, as if stepping on sacred ground. I asked you, Patricia. I asked you not to hide anything from me. Not because I need control, he added, but because each secret drives us apart. Each lie builds a wall between us. I know, she said, tears in her eyes. But I've lived my whole life hiding, shrinking, trying to seem whiter, richer, more acceptable. And when I fell in love with you, the fear of losing you was stronger than anything. Nathan cupped her face tenderly. Your mother is incredible, beautiful, steadfast, strong. She has a smile that lights up and a heart that welcomes. How could you be ashamed of that? Because I grew up hearing that being like her was enough to make me invisible. Nathan sighed. Then now it's my turn to ask you something. What? She trembled. Are you leaving me? I'm trying to understand. Understand myself. Breathe. I don't know what to do with all this. I need space. And he left, without looking back. In the weeks that followed, Nathan returned to his office, a man divided. But something changed. Every time he passed Joanna in the lobby, he stopped, greeted her, exchanged kind words, and sometimes left a yellow rose on the front desk with a short note. For the lady who taught me without words. It was his way of saying, forgive me for not seeing you before. Then, on a quiet Tuesday, they met in the elevator. He with coffee in hand, she pushing her cleaning bucket. The elevator stalled for a few seconds. A technical glitch. Looks like we're going to have a conversation, Joanna said with a calm, almost maternal smile. Nathan laughed for the first time in days. Do you have something to tell me? He asked. She breathed deeply. I do. About Patricia. Yes. Nathan waited. The notes, she said, they were from me. His eyes widened. Why? Because I saw you. I saw that you were different. I saw that you loved my daughter. But I needed to know who I was letting into her life. You tested your own daughter. Joanna nodded, resolute. I raised her to be honest, to be proud of who she is. But Patricia carries deep wounds. I don't judge her, but I don't shield her from everything. If she wants to love truly, she must shed her masks. Love can't survive filtered. Nathan leaned against the elevator wall. I don't know what to do with all this. Part of me wants to run back. Another part wants to flee forever. Joanna looked into his eyes. Do what love tells you. But don't fool yourself. To love is to accept the other, including their wounds they haven't healed yet. The elevator resumed upward. The door opened. But Nathan stood frozen for a few more seconds, breathing, feeling that, in the end, all true love passes the crossroads between fear and surrender. He decided then, on a sunny Saturday, to show up unannounced with flowers. He wanted to see her, but also to enter the house, to understand, to fill in the blanks. Joanna opened the door. Her smile was the same, wide, bright, welcoming. "Can I help you, Mr. Nathan? What a lovely surprise to see you here." Mr. Nathan. The thought came before his response. She knows who I am. I came to see Patricia, Mrs. Joanna Clark, Patricia's mother. You might not remember me. I'm the caretaker of the building where your office is. Shock. Silent earthquake. How had he not realized? How had he walked past her so many times and never truly seen her? He felt ashamed. Ashamed of his own inattentiveness. Of the superficial way he had treated so many people around him. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Joanna," he said, trying to compose himself. "You're right. In the rush of daily life, we often fail to see people. But you are unforgettable." Joanna smiled, and in that smile was something maternal, something divine. Something that said, "I see you, even when you don't see yourself." That afternoon's reunion with Patricia was quiet. Look, but a silent "I'm sorry" said through the eyes. Nathan confronted her. "Why didn't you tell me your mother works in the same building as me?" Patricia looked down. Shame weighed heavy. "Because I thought you'd be ashamed of me. Of her skin. Her uniform. Her simplicity." Nathan's chest burned. "I'm ashamed of myself. For never seeing her before. For making you feel like you had to hide something so beautiful. Your mother is a wonderful woman. And if you inherited even half her strength, that's more than enough for you to be the love of my life. But there was a break. Fracture. And even loving her deeply, Nathan asked for time. Time not to flee, but to understand. Process. To rebuild his own view of the world. In the weeks that followed, he began to notice Joanna in the hallways. Sometimes he would leave a yellow rose on the front desk. A silent gesture of affection, of respect, of apology. And so the story kept unfolding. Life has its own rhythm, at times beating like a passionate heart, at others dragging like the steps of someone burdened with longing. For Nathan, the following days felt like wandering through no man's land, where everything was silence and shadow, as if waiting for something to break through and finally dispel the doubts haunting his chest. The yellow roses left for Joanna were his way of preserving the dignity he saw in that woman, a discreet form of reparations, for a harm he hadn't caused directly, but from which he had not excused himself, through omission, blindness, and ignorance. Joanna, always gracious, received the flowers with a subtle smile. She never said anything, but there was something in her eyes, in the way she walked through the halls in her navy blue uniform and printed headscarf, that spoke louder than 1,000 words. With every rose, Nathan felt he wasn't just redeeming himself with her, but with a whole world he had long failed to truly see. It was on a Friday afternoon, as the sun began to hide behind the buildings of Washington, that Joanna decided to speak. She waited for him in the lobby and, with the elegance of someone who never lost her poise, even in pain, "Mr. Nathan, do you have a moment? I'd like to talk to you." As a mother, he nodded, fully attentive. They went up together to a quiet cafe on the 5th floor, sat by the window. Joanna placed her hands gently on the table and took a deep breath. "I know what you must be feeling. The confusion, the doubt, the loose ends." Nathan remained silent. He knew this moment called for listening, not questioning. "Those notes, I left them." Nathan raised his eyebrows, surprised, but not outraged. "You see, I didn't raise my daughter to lie. I didn't raise Patricia to deny where she came from. I taught her that her story, her color, her mother, are reasons to be proud. But she grew up in a world that taught her the opposite. And I watched little by little my daughter shrink, hide from herself just to fit in." Nathan felt a tightness in his chest. It wasn't anger he felt, it was sorrow. Sorrow for an entire generation taught to hide. "When I saw she was with you, I thought, maybe now she'll be free. But she kept hiding. I thought that if you knew you could help her, you could break the cycle. That's why I wrote the notes. I didn't want to hurt either of you. I just wanted to save my daughter from herself." Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words settle. There was no malice in them, only love. Love in its rawest, most authentic form. "Mrs. Joanna, I don't know what to say except, you're an admirable mother. And I'm sorry Patricia didn't see that sooner. But I love her. And if it's still possible, I want to walk with her. With all her parts, even the ones she's still afraid to show." Joanna smiled, touched. There was understanding in her gaze. There was hope. That night, Nathan called Patricia. He invited her to dinner. She accepted, but arrived tense, her eyes cautious, as if expecting another withdrawal. During dinner, Nathan looked into her eyes and said, "Your mother told me. About the notes. About you. About the fear." Patricia swallowed hard but didn't look away. "I don't blame you, Patricia. Understand. Growing up under the shadow of judgment is like living in a constant state of alert. But you don't have to hide anymore. Not from me." She cried. Cried in public without shame. Cried like someone finally letting go of a weight they'd carried since childhood. "I'm so afraid, Nathan. Afraid I'm not enough. Afraid I won't be loved completely. Afraid the part of me I've hidden is exactly the one that will make you leave." Nathan held her hands firmly. "The part you hid is the most beautiful. The one that connects you to your roots. The one that carries your mother's strength. The one that made you who you are. If I ever leave, it won't be because of that. But I don't intend to go anywhere." She smiled through her tears. For the first time without fear. The days that followed were about rebuilding. Nathan started visiting Patricia's home frequently. Joanna welcomed them with her famous cornbread, and they talked at length on the porch as the sun dipped low. Slowly, a new story began to form. More honest, more real. Patricia started taking Nathan to meet her extended family. Uncles, cousins, neighbors. Simple, hard-working people, full of folk wisdom and generous hearts. Nathan was embraced as if he'd always been one of them. He discovered that love isn't about status, but about presence. And one day, while walking hand in hand through a park in Seattle, Nathan said, "I want to build a house with you. Not a mansion. A house with a soul like your mother's." Patricia smiled. She didn't answer with words. She just hugged him. Because she knew, she was finally being loved fully. There was a new silence between them, but it was a silence full of meaning, like the space between the notes of a song that only makes sense when the heart listens to the melody. Nathan and Patricia walked side by side down a tree-lined path in early autumn, dry leaves forming a golden and reddish carpet at their feet, as if nature itself were blessing them. A soft breeze danced through the branches, carrying the last remnants of an old time, making room for the new, which began to bloom right there, in slow steps and intertwined hands. After everything they had been through, the revelations, the shocks, the apologies, the reunions, it was now time to look at each other again with the eyes of someone who chooses to stay. Nathan no longer saw Patricia as the idealized woman of before, but as someone complete, with light and shadow, with open wounds and sacred scars. And it was precisely this broader, raw, and truthful view that made him love her even more. Not because of her perfection, but because of her truth. Patricia also saw him with new eyes. The image of the wealthy, successful man, admired and desired, had been replaced by the man who sat in her mother's kitchen to listen to stories from her childhood. The man who washed dishes after dinner and mopped the floor after spilling wine. The man who could say, "I'm sorry" without pride, who admitted when he didn't understand, but never stopped trying. The man who, instead of judging, listened, and by listening, loved. On a Sunday with blue skies and slow-moving clouds, Nathan took Patricia to see a piece of land. It sat on a hill with a view of the lake. The grass was still tall, the soil uneven, but his eyes already saw what didn't exist yet. A house of light wood, a wide porch, large windows so the morning sun could enter uninvited, a lemon tree in the backyard, an herb garden, and a small studio where Patricia could write her social projects, her dreams, her sorrows. And a library, oh, the library, where Nathan could keep not only books, but fragments of the new life he wished to build with her. "I know it sounds bold," he said, tracing the imaginary outline of the house with his finger. "But I don't just want to live with you. I want to belong to the same ground. I want our stories to be told within the same walls. I want breakfast to be ours, even when we're silent. I want to see you barefoot on the porch reading a book. I want your mother cooking for us on Sundays. I want the backyard chats with your cousins. I want all of you, Patricia. Your color, your courage, your heritage. I want the life that comes with you." She cried again, and laughed at the same time. It was as if all her identities, the girl who was ashamed of her mother's uniform, the teenager who dreamed of being accepted at Harvard, the woman torn between worlds, embraced each other in that moment. She no longer had to choose sides. She could at last be whole and say yes. Yes to love, yes to the story, yes to the future. The months that followed were about literal and symbolic construction. Together they sketched the house's blueprint, chose the materials, visited craft fairs to find unique pieces with soul. Patricia insisted that the facade have vibrant colors, inspired by the houses of her childhood, with details honoring the African American aesthetic that resonated deeply with her heart. Nathan, in turn, handled the practical side, negotiating with suppliers, organizing timelines, but always letting her voice be the compass. During that time, Joanna became a constant presence. She was the one who brought food for the workers on long days, who planted seeds in the makeshift garden, who smiled like someone who finally saw her daughter blooming. And Nathan more and more called her Mama Joanna, an endearment that sprang up naturally, as all true things do. But the world, with its sharp tongue and narrow gaze, would not rest. Malicious comments began to circulate on social media, in the hallways of Nathan's building, during lunch breaks among suited colleagues. They said he had lost his way, that he was throwing away his image, that this was charity, not love. Some even went as far as to suggest Patricia was taking advantage of his kindness to climb the social ladder. These words eventually reached Patricia's ears and cut her like a knife. She didn't want to be seen as a project. She didn't want their love reduced to a savior and saved narrative. And one night, when Nathan came home with tired eyes and a cluttered mind, she exploded. "I don't want to be your inclusion flag," she cried through tears. "I don't want to be the black woman you chose to love just to make a point. I'm not your trophy of a clear conscience. I am a woman. I'm Joanna's daughter, I'm the granddaughter of immigrants, I'm educated, I'm strong, and I am worthy of love for who I am, not for what I represent." Nathan stood in silence. Her pain was real. He gently took her by the shoulders and spoke softly. "And I love you exactly for all of that. Not because you stand for something, but because you simply are. And if I ever made you feel otherwise, I'm sorry. The last thing I want is for our love to become a display. I want it to be a home. Our home." They cried together, embraced on the unfinished floor of the living room. And that night they understood. To truly love is to have the hard conversations. It's facing not only the outside enemies but the inner ghosts. It's choosing to stay, even when everything around says to run. At the housewarming months later, there was a party in the backyard. A guitarist played soft tunes as children ran between garden beds. Joanna wore a yellow dress that made her eyes sparkle even brighter. Nathan gave a speech, with Patricia by his side. This house is more than concrete and wood. It's made of choices, of forgiveness, of roots and wings. Above all, it stands as a testimony. Love does not choose color. Love chooses courage. And among applause and tears, Patricia kissed the man who, instead of offering her a pedestal, offered her solid ground. A ground where she could finally dance barefoot. Time, that silent and faithful artisan, wove the threads of their new life, blending the everyday with the eternal, simplicity with depth, affection with vulnerability. Now that the house stood tall, a living witness of their love, daily life began to shape itself into something almost sacred. Home. There, amidst the scent of fresh morning coffee, the sound of Nathan flipping through the newspaper, and the clay mug Patricia always forgot beside the bookshelf, there was peace. But not a dull or sleepy peace. A peace that knew the bad days would come, but that love would always have room to stay. Patricia always woke up before him. She liked watching the sun rise through their bedroom window, the orange and gold kissing the trees like a quiet gratitude for one more day. Wrapped in the shawl Joanna had given her, she'd sit in her armchair, read old poetry, scribble stray thoughts in her leather-bound journal, and smile at the sound of Nathan's sleepy steps on the stairs, always ready to make the coffee. He, in turn, had come to treasure small joys, like watching Patricia tie her hair in a messy bun while singing off-key songs she made up on the spot. Nathan, who had spent most of his life in formal environments, surrounded by pressure and deadlines, found in this life with her a space where he could finally breathe without needing to prove anything. It was as if time slowed down when they were together, and every minute grew thick with meaning. Weekends were almost always filled with visits from Patricia's family. Children sprawled across the porch, Joanna telling stories from her childhood in rural Georgia, cousins trading turns between domino games and barbecue shifts. Nathan, little by little, was absorbed into the organized chaos, called Nate by the nieces and nephews, lovingly scolded by Aunt Lourdes for not cutting okra properly, laughing at himself as he tried to dance foro with the elder uncles. The house had become a hive, full of voices, flavors, and memories stitched into new moments. Patricia and Nathan knew they were building more than a relationship. They were writing a story that defied the world's expectations, while honoring the oldest human longing, to love and be loved without conditions, without hidden contracts, without fear. And in that journey, they discovered that the challenges hadn't disappeared. They had only changed places. There were days when Nathan doubted himself, when he sat in meetings with old college peers who asked, thinly veiled in irony, "So how's life out in the sticks with your new humanitarian mission?" Or when he read articles that treated interracial love as a social phenomenon and wondered if they were doomed to always live under labels. It was in those moments he looked into Patricia's eyes and found the most powerful reminder of all. They were there for each other, and that was bigger than any opinion. Patricia, too, had her fears. Some days, a single side eye in a restaurant or a veiled whisper was enough to wake her old insecurities. But when she looked at Nathan, the way he held her hand in public, introduced her with pride, called her his woman without hesitation, she remembered. She didn't need to explain herself to anyone. Their love wasn't a manifesto. It was a choice, made day after day, in a world still learning how to accept the simple. One night, as the rain gently tapped the roof, they sat on the living room floor, wrapped in a blanket, looking through old photos. Each image was a window into the past. Their first trip together, the day they built their first furniture, the picture of Joanna holding a plate of cake. They laughed, teared up. And then Nathan, voice trembling, said, "I know the world will always try to fit us into categories, Patricia. But when I look at you, I don't see any of them. I see the woman I want to grow old with. I see the mother of my children. I see the future I never knew I wanted. But now I can't imagine living without." She embraced him tightly and said, "And I see the man who chose to love me without needing to fix me. The one who welcomed me without trying to reshape me. Who looked at me and saw beauty where the world insisted on placing doubt. If that's not real love, then nothing else is." And so they carried on day after day. Not as a perfect couple, but as two imperfect souls who chose to become one path. A path where footprints intertwine, where the past isn't erased but embraced, where the future isn't a promise. It's a work in progress. And on the porch, beneath the soft light of dusk, with Joanna stitching quietly nearby and a stray mutt sleeping at the foot of the sofa, Nathan took Patricia's hand and said, "I love you, for all that you are, and for all that we are together. Shall we keep going?" She smiled, her eyes shining, and replied, "Until the end." And after that too. Time, for a brief moment, seemed to pause its march, as if paying respect to that silent vow made between two souls who, though from different worlds, had found a shared home. Not in a wooden house with a wide porch, but in each other's hearts. And there, amid the leaves slowly falling in quiet announcement of another autumn, amid laughter and memories, amid the simplicity of daily life and the depth of affection, a story was born, one that needed no more witnesses and no defense. Simply was. And that was enough.